Good afternoon, East Goshen. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. It's a warmer day here, and hopefully you're thawing out from the last couple weeks of cold weather. Sorry I missed you on Friday. I didn't have a chance to upload a video, but I also didn't want to rush through and just churn something out so that we had a video up. I want to take my time with you all and have a great discussion about the book of Ecclesiastes. So we're diving back in today, back on schedule Tuesdays and Thursdays for our devotional videos, and we are working our way through the difficult book of Ecclesiastes. Let's just admit right here, this book is dark. The language is very, very dark and oftentimes cynical and jaded and pessimistic. But the teacher has come to be known in the Jewish tradition as the preacher of joy, or the teacher of joy. And so what I want us to wrap our minds around is not just the negative tone that he takes, but he's trying to paint a negative picture of the world as far as the temporary is concerned. We've fleshed out his understanding of this life on Sunday and last week on Wednesday, that all of our efforts are meaningless. All of our efforts here on this earth under our own power are meaningless. It's this endless cycle of repetition where we work towards the impermanent things in this life. We work towards acquiring wealth. We work towards acquiring experiences. We work towards acquiring a name for ourselves. And ultimately what he wants to point us to is away from the temporary, fleeting nature of this existence towards the permanency and eternal nature of the divine. So what I don't want you to take away from the opening chapters is life is short, everything is pain, and then you die. That's not the point that the teacher is trying to make. So hopefully you haven't taken that away from the beginning here. I know it's pretty bleak at the outset, and some of the language is going to continue to be dark. But what I want us to focus on is the moments of eternity breaking into the temporary nature of this existence. The world cries out for newness that comes from a sovereign and holy God who is ever interacting with the world to bring in that newness of life. So let's dive back into the text. We've established this world that the teacher wants to paint for us. We've seen the depths of struggle and toil that are meaningless in the end because life is fleeting and our accomplishments are certainly fleeting as well. And so we've painted this picture. The teacher then moves into a bit of an autobiographical portion of the book. End of chapter 1, moving into chapter 2. We'll be in chapter 2 for the majority of today. But end of chapter 1, he says that wisdom has become meaningless to him. He has pursued the wisdom tradition of the people of God with his whole life. He has tried to gain as much insight as he can from it. And what he realizes in the end is that the world doesn't work according to formulas. The world isn't a cosmic vending machine that we can just put the right things in and get out blessing in return. No, the world is full of brokenness. It cries out for restoration. We can't guarantee a good life just because we live righteously. Bad things happen to good and wicked people at the same rate. And so wisdom in the end is meaningless because it has not guaranteed his place in the blessed existence that it promises. It has not guaranteed his life will be easy and happy all the time. And as the king over Judah, the teacher has to wrestle with his own place in the pages of history. He may be one of the wisest people of his day. He may have been a skilled gardener. He may have been a skilled leader, administrator, a skilled tactician on the field of battle. All of these different things he talks about. I was more accomplished than anyone else. I was more famous. I was more influential. I had all of these things going for my legacy, and yet in the end, it was meaningless. The first I want to focus on for today is chapter 2, verse 11, where the teacher writes, "Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun." It's a question of leaving a legacy behind. And what the teacher realizes is that his accomplishments are fleeting. When he passes from this life, his accomplishments will fade eventually from the pages of history. No one will remember that he was a skilled gardener. No one will remember how great and wise he was when you get far enough out from his lifetime. He's trying to build a legacy under his own power, and he realizes that all of these accomplishments will not last forever. The only reason, and the ironic reason, that we remember the teacher is because of this strange little book that we have, because of his outlook on life. And so what he realizes is that our work in this life is temporary and fleeting. It's meaningless because it will not outlast us. And so try as we might to be remembered, try as we might to forge our path in this world, ultimately our efforts are meaningless. Our legacy will not last on our own power. But what the teacher wants to do is redirect our focus from the temporary fleeting accomplishments that you and I can do under our own power and point us to the eternal purposes of God. In chapter 3, he talks about that eternity is set on the hearts of mankind. And so what he wants to emphasize is that while our plans, our purposes for our own lives may fail in the end and not be remembered, the plans and purposes of God are eternal. That while our legacy is fleeting, the faithful legacy of God's consistent love for mankind stands the test of time and will continue on through the ages. So we shouldn't work towards all of these fleeting accomplishments because ultimately they'll fade away in the end. And what we should turn our attention to are the things that touch into eternity. The moments of joy, of insight, the moments that draw us closer to God. Those sorts of moments in our lives are pockets of eternity in the midst of the temporary. And so the teacher wants to point us towards the eternal purposes of God. We shouldn't focus on our own accomplishments because they will fade. But what God has for our lives will last into the ages. And so ask yourself, how am I focusing not on my own fortune, my own fame, my own renown in my life? How am I making God the center of my attention? How am I fighting to be part of the legacy of faithfulness that God has called us to? And inviting other people into the eternal now, the moments of eternity that break into our existence here in this life, because those are the moments that matter. So how are you focusing on the legacy of God's kingdom and his purposes in the world? Because that's a legacy that will last. That's a legacy that is not meaningless. It is purposeful and it is full of joy. Thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you on Thursday as we continue through the book of Ecclesiastes. For Thursday, we will wrap up chapter 2, and then we will move into chapter 3 for Sunday's service. Thanks for joining me. I will see you Thursday. Have a great rest of your day.